turning into 8 sharp. So, George, would you like to go first?
All right, can do. Just have to find my presentation. And let's see.
We got it all right.
Okay, you see that?
Yes.
I agonized over exactly what angle I wanted to use to get into this subject, but there are so many that I could. But the main one that I want to actually address is the notion that what we accept as normal, the governments that we have, the way we govern things and so forth, we just sort of accept that that's it. And now all we're going to have to do is do a little tweaking here and there to get it right. And I'm going to suggest to this group that maybe we got it all wrong at the very beginning. And I want to emphasize another thing, which is the danger that I see of looking at systems things through a single lens, such as cybernetics, is that you miss something that's can be pretty important. So I'm going to talk about the role of evolution in system genesis and how we got to where we are today based on some actually not so good things that happened in the past. My way of attacking this is going to be through what's called deep history, or at least going back to the origin of the genus Homo. And we have to understand, or I'm taking as given, that we human beings are animals, and we have biophysical requirements, which means that we have to have a ecological system that is providing support for us. The genus Homo is noted for being the one that sort of broke out of the ecological constraints by things like we had already had control of fire, or limited control of fire, before Homo habilis came along. But we started intentionally shaping rocks and wood and other things to make tools. And this gave us the ability to break those ecological constraints. And by that, I'm referring to the issues that are basically population control, the predation and food resource availability and things of that nature, which tend to keep other species basically in balance, in a dynamic balance with their environment. So with the Homo, we see a rapid expansion, I say, of cleverness. The brain nearly trebled in size to get to Homo sapiens. And the capacity to make tools and to cooperate within a group to get things done, essentially, was really the beginning of something that I'm calling a fatal positive feedback. And why is it fatal? Well, if you break out of the constraints of the ecology, then you're going to have to replace that with something. We started out, we were ignorant of where this would all go. We just did it because we could do it. And it resulted in our ability to capture more energy in the form of food and conserve energy in the form of housing and clothing and so forth. Led to population growth and territorial expansion. So this explosion of cleverness gave us this ability to extract resources, capture much more energy. And as I said before, we were just ignorant of the consequences. Pardon me. We ended up amplifying the cycles of group growth and decline that are pretty much part of nature, and just kept growing and kept growing. With the invention of agriculture, things just really took off, and our populations increased in size, and kinds of social organization from tribal villages to small, what were called grain states, took off. And we came out of this believing that we were given dominion over the earth. And I'm going to claim that that's turned out not to be the case at all. So what I want to look at is, how did our governance structures, or the organization of society and the governance structures, evolve from these early times, taking off with the agricultural revolution, and the consequences. And so we've got this species that's really smart, really clever, capable of solving all kinds of problems and expanding and just taking over the world, so to speak, without any comprehension whatsoever of what the consequences would be. These so-called grain states, we recognize the populations were quite large. We recognized a need for reorganization and the management of what I call mass agricultural processes, which required an emphasis on logistical coordination. So you had not just a bunch of farmers who would go to market, but rather you had the first industrial processing of grains and other foodstuffs that had to be organized and had to be managed. And once they became big enough and there became enough of these grain states around, this was all going in the Fertile Crescent area and so forth, required tactical coordination, because the groups would tend to clash with one another or try to take over each other's territories. And so it is a natural evolutionary response in complex adaptive systems that they create a hierarchical management structure. I've got a number of papers out on that topic. And people being what they are, human beings being what they are, we really were kind of forced into this idea of a top-down command and control structure and function. And it's really easy to see why, that you've got a lot of people involved in doing the work of agriculture and tool making and so forth. And someone had to coordinate it. Not very many needed. And so what are you going to do to coordinate this number of people? The natural response, since humans don't particularly see themselves as draft animals, is that you've got to have some sort of a power structure and rules of enforcement that basically say, this is what you got to do, and I'm going to make you do it, and tax you on some of your effort and a whole variety of things. And so we end up with this hierarchical power-based governance structure. And what unfortunately again happened is another rapid increase in population sizes and the complexities of the civilizations that were coming out of that. Today, we basically have the same thing. All so-called governments are in some way, shape, or form a hierarchical power structure with a top-down command and control basis. And here's one of the things that I want to strongly emphasize. the governance that we sort of invented, you might say designed as we went along, but really it was more an evolutionary process. They're geared to promote expansion. That is to say, they're not replacing the kind of ecological constraints that kept all other species in balance with their ecosystems. We have nothing like that. And in fact, what we've got is a governance process that is actually trying to make us grow even more, take over more of the earth. And I'm claiming that that is leading, and I think we're beginning to see that now, to what's actually happened many times throughout history is a collapse of civilization. And what we should be asking is, how do we rectify that situation? So we might consider future societies. As I said, I believe that we're going to see a global collapse of what we call civilization now. And assuming there will be survivors, how would we go about, now that we know we need to have those kinds of constraints on our population size and on our resource extraction activities and so forth. So what form of governance could manage both the well-being of the social members and to keep us in balance with our environment? So I'll leave this sharing on in case anybody wants me to go back to one of the slides.